this one will go up on YouTube as public. So if you want me to pause the recording at any time, just ask, no problems. So, Rowena, you said that you're working with fear that comes up.
Yeah.
Or you're doing something and fear is coming up. So what are the circumstances that gets fear?
Well, I got into a situation with somebody and I announced I was going to do something, and then there was some suggestions of which I took as threats of consequences, because that person didn't want me to do what I was planning on doing. And first of all, there was a reaction that came of, how dare that person tell me what to do? But then, so I sat with that, and then afterwards I tapped into, I did a phrase, you know, in the sort of the way that in a very neutral way. And I was able to then tap into really an old-based fear that that took over my body, that really reminded me of, it sort of took back on a whole thread of actually fear of doing anything because of consequences that might happen. And this was a sort of the vague sense of it. And so over the last little while, I just bring up the phrase, or make it even more simple, just to tap into that sort of rather paralyzing sense that has been living in the tissues, I think, for a long time. So it's it's cool. Actually, it's wonderful to tap in. It was like hiding, I think, or maybe I didn't know I hadn't tapped into it before. Frustration and other things that I've worked with, but this was, I've had some fear when I was also when I was working with seeing, with just direct experience of seeing and feeling that, and seeing how when it turned into being seen, looking into, I'm seeing, what I'm seeing is seeing me, the whole field was seeing me. I had to go through a lot of fear with that. So a sort of like a being, I suppose, sort of sort of like a type of fear, although there was no one there, because it was just seeing going on. There was this sort of play of backwards and forwards. And that was really interesting. And even now still, maybe it's also that thing with fear and excitement. You don't really know quite what it is. The sense, it's just sensation, like, let's just say sensation of just getting really close into the visual field, brings this sort of, it started off definitely as a fear-based thing, as a type of fear thing of the body. And now it's just more and more, I suppose, contact with just being in that visual field.
Yeah. So what better do you imagine that what are you working with? You're bringing it back to the lab, you're using a sentence, you're able to evoke that feeling
of the fear. Yes. I just read, the sentence was, so and so told me that if I did such and such a thing, I would there would be consequences, something like that, or they told me there would be consequences if and I just actually kept it as simple as that. And it was like the word consequences, and I saw how, how I have been held back of actually making choices and making decisions because of a fear of consequences, which it was a belief, some sort of belief, I guess, you know, that was ingrained, which I haven't really gone into. I mostly just work with because I don't want to get into a mind and some sort of story thing. So I just allow the things to come up. It's more the living experience, which is the most freeing, as it were. You know, after that, it's shifts and big breaths and just feeling energy moving.
Yeah, I'm wondering if the fear sensation that you're able to get active there isn't in fact already you moving out of the gap.
I think you're right. I think it's reaction, because it's shifted now. And when I get into the phrase, it's a much more different experience than it was in the beginning. And what I've noticed with all these, the theta, working with this, I don't think this is a 4 on 5. It's more of like a 2, as Pernille says, the fear, anger, guilt, doubt, whatever. It comes into the doubt.
Yep.
Area of theta 2, but I'm using the same process, sort of myself. And I've found, but in the beginning, it seems like the reaction overwhelms any initial sensation of just being able to absorb and experience the exchange that, oh, that was said, because there's the radar of me, self, comes in and grabs it. And so I'm noticing, and much more, it's really shifted to not go into the fear, just to have the initial sensations and be much more open to it. And there isn't a need for that reaction.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And I tend to have been working like that with whatever phrase. And I was working with somebody over email for a while, for the fetters, because it's those ones. I'm a very reactive person, so it's not like just see it once and it's gone. So I have to. It's just you know.
It can happen that way. It can be that you see it once and it's gone. But
I've heard that. Yes.
Not necessary, of course. Yeah. Yeah.
No.
So I was thinking as you were talking, I had this image of you trying to be invisible as a child.
Yeah. Yeah, even now it's like, don't rock the boat, because it's, yeah.
Mm. So do you see the fear response as the main player in this? I don't know quite how to put it. So I imagine that you would like to see a non-reaction and no fear response to those kind of things.
Well, I mean, obviously that would be ideal, but I'm really just, you know, one day, the shifts that happen all through the day, and the sensations, it's just, I'm really somehow very just in the flow of that, and whatever comes up is something to work with without having a real desire of, I mean, yes, it would be, of course, it would be nice to not have such intense sensations, but more the point is to get through, to see, to blow all the debris of any selfing out of the way.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to hear. So it's not, the fear is just a symptom. It's not about what
it's just like I feel like there's still a sort of, with some things, because often a lot of the time there's just a feeling of really, I can really resonate actually to the form is emptiness. Emptiness is form. I can really sort of have that sensation that comes all of a sudden and then leaves. And it just depends then what else comes up. And then there's this little radar that wants to identify or takes a position on something, and it picks up sort of an old thread of something that has been there, and it's like, oh, okay, there's work to do now.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I had lots of course, the whole types of expectations and working through the spiritual bypassing, and now it's so nice just to say, I'm really just not interested in any ideas about how anything's going to be. It's just getting clearing out anything that doesn't need to be there.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, we can't imagine how it's going to be anyway, can we?
No.
Yeah.
No, it's really, because I was quite influenceable of people and their suggestions and things like that. And now I'm, it's so lovely just to discard and say, oh, maybe that's just a thought. That's just an idea, maybe, but
yeah, I love it. So you're open to what might turn up.
Yeah. And also not getting out of the comparing, oh, this is the way it should be, because this is how people say it is going to be, and realizing, and I mean, this is my first time live with you guys, but I've really, picked up so much of the from listening to the group, because everybody's, all the people participating and saying, well, actually, it wasn't like that for me. And so it's like, oh, okay, because when you have just one person speaking, listening to people, often it's just their perspective. And so they, you get ideas.
Yep.
But this is really amazing group that you have set up, because it's just invites all points of view.
Yeah, I think I call it the hive wisdom. So as soon as we get a few people together, you get so many different perspectives. It's great. Yeah. So, hi, Candace.
Hi. I'm new to the group. A friend sent me the link, told me about the group. So this is my first time on, and I just wanted to say hi. And I didn't know if I'm eating lunch. That's why I turned my video off. And if there are any protocols that you'd like, that you ask that people follow.
Absolutely.
I do mute myself. And I'd like to be put on your email list. And do I put that in the chat? What do I do?
Yeah. Put your email address in the chat, and I'll add you to the list. Yeah. So I've got a really, really important protocol that I want everybody to follow, and that is that there is no protocol. Okay. No asking permission to talk. Just jump in if there's a space. And if there's not a space, interrupt somebody. That's okay. Whatever. Yeah. So tell me, have you, Candace, seen through the illusion of self?
Have I seen through the illusion of self?
Yeah.
Oh, periodically I do. I don't live in that space 100%.
Right.
And and the spiritual practices, and I'm a student of A Course in Miracles, so I've learned a lot through doing the workbook, and now I've been turned on to Michael Brown, The Presence Process, and I'm going to start reading that book. And so there's just so many different wonderful tools for as you say, seeing through the illusion of self.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. My suggestion is don't try and use too many of those tools at once. Just work through one at a time. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want my head to explode for sure.
Yeah, good one. Yeah. So has anybody got any particular thing they'd like to look at? Silence was the stern reply. Okay.
Well, I'll just chime in with something kind of random. Am I on mute or am I unmuted?
I can hear you.
It's just kind of random. Like, has anyone noticed sometimes when they're watching movies or shows or whatever, like non-dual themes? And has anyone here seen the series on Netflix that's pretty recent called Beef? Has anybody heard of it?
No, I haven't.
Kind of, it was
I
quite
sort
a
of tried to watch it, but then it seemed too silly, but I only watched the first one. So.
Did you? Right. So the first one starts off with basically it's a road rage incident where this guy and this,
Yeah.
well, he doesn't know it's a woman, but they end up in this road rage scene. So it really shows the angle. But the show goes on. It's just incredible. Like, it's just so relevant to life. Like, you see their triggers. It's a lot about anger, but it goes so much deeper where you see like people's choices. Of course, it's a lot to do with their shows Asian, fine actors. I believe it might be the same producers as who did that show Everywhere, Everything, Everywhere, All at Once, which I couldn't really get into, but it just won about awards. Because and by the end of the show, they end up like, without giving it away, they end up eating a poisonous plant by accident, and I think it's a bit psychedelic. And you actually see where these two people that are so different are really like twin flames and the same, and they can kind of see that they are each other, and they kind of switch bodies for a second. Anyway, I was watching it this week, and it just blew me away, like how many non-dual themes there are there, how much there is for like everyone to relate to with so many things, trauma, childhood. In this case, they're immigrants, so they're, different things, like some are Korean, some are Vietnamese, Japanese, Chinese. But just like, wow, I was just like, by the end, like, wow, whoever did that show, it's super non-dual. Like, so I just was putting it out there. Like, it'd be kind of cool to know, like, how everybody knows the Matrix, but it would be good to like get a list going of shows and stuff that people can see some of those themes, because I just find it's fascinating. And as I find myself less drawn to like reading spiritual things, I find this like, it's like everyday life, and seeing how it even comes into the art around us through movies, through shows. So it was just random, but it popped into my head. I thought I'd mention it. Yeah.
Yeah, there have been at times book lists compiled with themes like that floating around somewhere. I don't know where they are though. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I kept thinking of you, Vince. I was thinking like, oh my God, if Vince saw this part right now, he'd be crying. There were so many times I thought of that. Like, I have to tell Vince about this show. It's hilarious and funny and depressing and dark, but just like it encompasses so much of what humanity is like going through, and the quest for more. And there was a lot of themes I could see with the fetters, although I don't know the fetters offhand, but a lot of kind of like, emptiness and grasping and desires, and the more you have, and then this feeling that we all have that, but something's not right. Like, I'm serious, I was like blown away with this show.
Yeah, good one.
Yeah, I don't really have anything else to add, but it's a kind of a long weekend here in not really a long weekend, but it's July 4th in America. So, well, Paul is, who else here is from the States? Quite a few, right? Yeah. So a lot of people, I think, have taken a long weekend off. And so I was wondering how many people would be on today. So it's nice to see that they are a lot.
Yeah. So what feelings did it bring up for you? Without
Not sure I understand.
oh, go away. Without focusing on the plot, what was your response to some of those things?
I think the big ones were just seeing how the conditioning, like these people in the show could really only have made the choices that they made because of all the things that happened before. That was a big one. And
Yep.
yet, where as a society, we punish people for the choices they make. And I'm not saying that we don't have to do that. I guess everything would be chaos. But how sad it is in a way that, just how things can go because of, like, I thought my son, who's 19 now, when he was like, just turned 18, he did something kind of dumb, which I won't get into. And it all ended up okay. But I thought of like how that one choice he made could have affected his whole life, and maybe had he been a kid in a different community, we didn't have the money to get like a lawyer to help him out, and how like you could just see how down. Like another example is we have a restaurant, so we have this guy who's like a bartender, and he's a really nice guy, and he's come a long way, and he grew up in a really bad area, and he's making his way in life. But every now and again, like yesterday, something triggered him. He got angry and he chased the cook into the chiller. Like my husband just had to go in and talk to everybody. And I was telling my son, I was like, you realize like the violence that he shows is because he obviously, in childhood had a terrible childhood. And like, so the show brought that up a lot. And like Vince, how you always talk about, if you go, could it have been any other way? We could go right back to the woolly mammoth. Remember that little spiel you did? Like, if this was different, if our ancestors and if our grandmother didn't get with our grandfather, and you can go backwards in time. So there was a lot of that. And then the other thing, I guess, was you could see that these characters were never happy, even when like they had financially made it, like they wanted more, and like that emptiness inside. That's, I guess, what resonated. Just seeing, that's why I thought of you with the crying. Like there were times when you just I just felt so much empathy for them, it really did. And then how it, you see it in your own life and different things. Yeah, just like how broken we all are, but not broken in the sense, I don't like to use that word broken, but like just how just feel it so much for just everything around us, the human problems that are there and that we have too. And you just see it in degrees, and you see where some people just have it so much because of the trauma that they've gone through. And trauma, I guess that was it to me. Like trauma is such a big thing that we have to come to grips with in society. And this is why we have all these drug problems and, in America, like all the fentanyl and it's a lot.
Mm, mm.
So that's what kind of came up.
So it's probably one of the biggest ones, and I know that you carried that one a fair bit, and that is, what is our attitude towards the injustices, the stupidity, the whatever that we see going on around us all the time? We see not only individuals who get triggered into behavior that actually makes things worse for them, but we see whole states and whole countries doing the same kind of thing, being really stupid about things. We think, why?
Yeah.
So
The whole world.
so what is our attitude towards all the shit that's going on in the world?
Yeah, I'd like to hear some people's views on that.
Not a philosophical view. I want people's experience.
Right, because it's so easy to get philosophical, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it depends on the person too. As you know, Vince, sometimes I can feel hopeless and I feel like a lot of pain inside. Like I kind of feel the pain of the world. That for me, I'm not going to go off a lot quickly. So
I have an idea, Vince. What's been my experience is when I watch what's going on in the world, it's what I'm seem to be interested in is a reflection of the pattern in me. Because something over here can happen and everybody flocks to, I don't really care, it's boring. But over here, I'm all glued to this. And what I'm finding is it's a reflection of a pattern that's still playing out in this trauma, that hasn't been seen through yet. And so if it brings up fear or it pisses me off or I just cry, such grief, and I'm drawn to that particular topic for my own awakening, to be able to see. So as long as I remember that when it triggers that in me, then look inside, because that's what it's for, everything that's going on out there. Because over here, this is happening and that's triggering somebody else, but I'm not interested. So the ones I'm interested in, the one I'm drawn to, the one that I can't forget about, or one that really upsets me or makes me angry or causes fear, is from that's my pattern I'm seeing.
Yeah.
So it's for my healing to be able to sit with that and take that presence, that awareness, and sit with that pattern and allow it to integrate.
Yeah. Of course, if we do get triggered and we follow the emotion, it generally leads us nowhere but to more emotion, eh? So,
No, not the story of emotion, the sense of the familiar feeling. So the emotion is just the pathway, and the story keeps the emotion alive and keeps it reoccurring, the whole victim pattern, right? But I don't mean that. I don't stop at the emotion. The emotion has a certain feeling, very familiar, and that's where the trauma it has been laying in the unconscious or in the cells or whatever, however we want to describe that. And so when that emotion has that familiar feeling of fear or anger or grief, then I can sit with that and become aware of it. And it dissolves because it doesn't have a story. It comes into the light of my presence, of my awareness, and it doesn't have a story. So it ultimately dissipates and dissolves, where emotion can still have stories attached to it.
yeah, well, it certainly does. So you look for the stories that are coming up?
Not necessarily, no. The stories, because they're not important usually. It doesn't matter where it came from. It's the feeling that it stirs up, that it wakes up, that's been laying dormant in the unconscious, that pattern that's very familiar.
Okay.
And so what happens to me is fear, and I'll feel this and I'll go, okay, what is that? Because like you're saying, it could be fear or excitement, right? So I ask with awareness, and I ask it more, is that fear? Is that excitement? Or is it, and pretty soon it just doesn't matter what it is anymore. It doesn't need even a label anymore. It's just heart pounding or butterflies in the stomach. It just doesn't matter, but it's being present with what's happening in the body. And and if I've resisted it and made it uncomfortable to where I try to keep a cap on it, right? Because it's been labeled as uncomfortable or bad. So even that, when that label comes off, all I'm left with is these reverberations of what I had been avoiding. And it actually becomes quite blissful, actually, when I take the cap of resistance off it. And then it just kind of breaks up and dissolves, because it's lost the stories. Sometimes crying happens and then that'll pass. But the stories aren't important. They don't matter. They just keep it alive.
Yeah.
It's like going to the root of where it's coming from.
So what I want to ask you though is, does this procedure that you go through, this sequence of events, does that mean that one doesn't come back again? or does it come back again?
I won't know.
Mm,
I won't know because I'm just being with what is.
Yeah.
So I won't know. I could be walking down and I see something on TV. I don't watch TV, but like, I don't know, on a YouTube or something, or somebody says something and I get this, whoa. And then I just go, okay, I could go and look what you said to me, or whatever bullshit I make up. Or I could say, oh, present, breathe, feel it, oh, be with what is. And then it moves until something else shows up.
mm, mm.
There's no story about it, something going away. It's just being present with what is as it is in the moment that it is.
Mm.
If I had a story that it would go away, then I'm making something up. I have no idea.
Yeah, I guess I'm wondering whether or not you're treating symptoms or you're treating the cause. Are you, if you're just doing this process that allows it to dissipate and go away each time?
It just does it on its own, because if
Yeah.
I don't try to make it go away, because that would be me resisting it. So it's just kind of like breathing air.
Yeah.
You know, situation happens, I watch something, whatever, somebody says something, there's something happens. And I used to ignore that or deny it or try to be happy over it, or,
Yeah.
you know, thing that I would make up felt better. And instead what I'm doing is just being present to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it seems to dissipate on its own. Sometimes it's really quick and sometimes it takes a really long time. Sometimes crying happens, sometimes it doesn't, sometimes nothing happens. And so I don't really have a story about it other than I'm being with
All
what
right.
is.
So my question comes up now.
Mhm.
Is there recognition involved in it? Do you see anything when you
Insights after it happens. I get insights.
Yes.
Like,
yeah.
yeah, like after it happens and it's, I'll get an insight about it. That's,
That's the big one for me.
yeah, I'll get an insight that's a lot of clarity.
Mm.
A lot of clarity, very, very calm and clear and grounded. And yeah, like I think I had one of a fear come up because of some things I was watching. And so I went in and I was with it. And when it passed, there was so much stability in the present, in the presence, in the awareness, that I saw that fear was made up. But it was stored someplace because I wasn't thinking anything that, well, I guess I was thinking things that caused it, but it was like, it happens really fast. But when it happens and it moves through, and then it clears because I'm sitting with it instead of trying to deny it and be positive and do affirmations and all this bullshit that I used to do to feel better or to switch my focus or whatever. Oh, there's no me, blah, blah, blah. I mean, it didn't matter what I'd say, try to like get away from it. And now I just sit with it and be with it. And then as it passes, then I get these insights of clarity that this awareness is my safety. This awareness is what's going to keep me fed. You know, it's like this awareness is my safe. I don't know how, you know, it's just, I get these really sharp clarities afterwards.
Yeah.
And it's different than what I used to do of trying to not feel those feelings and trying to be positive and trying to look a certain focus and very controlling. Right. So now I just surrender to whatever happens.
Yeah. So afterwards, you feel like something has changed?
I feel clear. I feel like the noise of whatever had that happen. You know, some people say it could be stored in our bodies. It could be stored in unconscious. These are all stories. Wherever it comes from, it happens. And it could happen because I watched something and thoughts started happening and emotions happening and it happens so fast, right? So the story of how it gets there to me is unimportant. Being with it when it happens, as it happens, because it's what's happening right now, instead of denying it and trying not to feel it. brings me, it moves through and brings me back to this.
Mm.
And clarity of this and the security in this and the solidness of this, and that was just chatter. And
Yeah.
that's where I end up without trying to force that this is just chatter on top of it,
Mm.
which wasn't working for me.
Yeah, sounds good. You're nodding there, Catherine.
Yeah, this is, I mean, what Jenny is describing is a practice that I'm doing more and more, and I'm actually introducing to my clients more and more, and less about the story and more just going into what is the sensation? What is the experience that's right here?
Yeah.
And like Jenny pointed out, you know, afterwards, after allowing the feeling, after allowing the experience, after allowing whatever this is that maybe has been knotted up and stuck, and now it's allowed to move. Afterwards, there may be insights, right? There may be connections, but it's changed my pattern in working with myself and with others of like, oh, go get the story first. And like, what does this remind you of? It's like, if that comes up as part of the exploration, then that's fine. But first and foremost, it's just looking at the sensation and being with it, not looking for a why, just an open what. So very familiar. Yeah. Thank you, Jenny.
It's a little subtle, but it occurs to me that it's good that we just have to be really careful. We're still going to have the idea that we're wanting something to change. And we don't control these things. So that's what, if that's what comes up, that's what comes up. Noticing it without judgment or opinion.
Or resistance.
Yeah. Well, I guess.
All of those are
Or
forms.
Or expectation that it's going to change.
Right.
Like that's what's happening and
Really,
they never,
yeah.
no expectation, no even expectation of a clarity. You know, sometimes it just moves through and nothing happens. But it's me not resisting what is.
So that trick of even though we have no expectations, there's still an underlying desire to make it better.
Not necessarily, no. Because when I try to make it better, that causes contraction and pain.
Yeah.
If I surrender into it, it actually can be quite blissful. Because there's no resistance. And it's like, oh my God, this is just vibrations. This is nothing. Oh my goodness. I was making up a whole deal about this and trying to get rid of it. And so there's a surrender into it, not trying to make it better. Because that would be like maybe the initial step. Oh, I got to make this better. That's what I would do before. Oh, I got to make this feel better. It's so uncomfortable, right? But when I stopped resisting any meaning and just even labels, even good or bad, even dualities about it. Oh, this is good, this is bad, it should be this, it shouldn't be this, and this is a label, this is called pain, you know, this is whatever, and just sat with it as just or whatever it does, then there's no need to get rid of it.
So would you say, when you say just sat with it, would you say that you're inviting it?
No.
Or you're tolerating it?
No.
The word willingness comes up for me.
Yeah, it's not tolerating it. It's not it's the awareness is just being with what's happening. So it's not tolerating it. It's not trying to make it go away. It's not inviting it in.
I'm just trying to clarify this just being with it thing.
Okay. Okay. Like breathing. It's like breathing.
Like
You're
unconscious breathing or conscious breathing?
Well, it would be conscious breathing because you're aware of it. Just breathing, a lot of times I'm not aware I'm breathing.
So when you
Isn't it just noticing it?
Yeah, it's noticing it like breathing. So it's conscious. It's not conscious controlled breathing. It's conscious that you're breathing. Like if I'm not paying attention, I don't know I'm breathing, so I'm not conscious. I'm breathing. If I am aware that I'm breathing, I'm noticing that I'm breathing, but I'm not controlling it.
There is
There's
there is a bringing awareness to it, right?
Yeah,
And,
it's just
and sitting with that and just watching, or
yeah, and it's like breathing with awareness, but without control.
So when we're watching it, do we have a sense of discovery?
No, not necessarily. It's like wind blowing on your skin. You feel the breeze blowing on your skin. There's an awareness that there's a sensation on your skin. We take off the label breeze, right? We take off the label cool breeze, and then there's just not even skin. There's just sensation. It's not even breeze, cool breeze on skin. All that goes away, and what's left is that sensation without all that story.
So with that analogy, we're noticing the breeze on our skin. We're shifting our focus around the place, aren't we? We shift our focus from the bits of skin that are bare to the bits that have got clothes over them, and we're noticing
Because
that
it
sensation,
stimulated me.
yeah.
Right, because it triggered me. So I'm not purposely shifting my focus.
Yeah.
It's like, so that's what I'm saying, I don't look for it. But if it happens, cool breeze on skin, and I go, oh, otherwise I could be standing there all day long and somebody could say, look at the cool breeze. And I'm like, what? I don't know what you're talking about.
Mm.
So it's not like I look for it or shift my focus around. It's that it, because it's a trigger, it'll, right? And then drop the story, drop, whatever emotion, drop labels, go down to sensation. Emotion may come, but emotion isn't tried to come.
Mm.
In fact, sometimes crying happened. That happened to me the other day where crying happened, and it's like I kept letting go of the story. It doesn't matter. Story doesn't matter. Story doesn't matter. Just let it come up and out. And then it passed. And then I happened to get some clarity, but it just happened. Sometimes no emotion happens. Sometimes no clarity happens. It's just practicing. So I'm not out looking for it, but if something triggers, then I'm present and aware with that.
So what happens if a judgment or an opinion arises about what's going on? What do you do with that?
And I notice that. I notice, oh, there's an expectation there. Interesting. And then I just see it as, right?
Yep.
And then, emotion comes. Okay. And then, okay, that's done. Whatever that was about. Who gives a shit, So it's just kind of like totally being with what is without stories and labels. And I'm not saying that that's the end. Who knows? It's just, sometimes it doesn't happen for days. Nothing happens for days, right? Nothing triggers, no wind blows on the skin, nothing happens. And then I'm just watching, eyes looking. And then something gets me again. And I go, oh, I'm just noticing and looking instead of ignoring. And I don't, like, I know thoughts are story, so that leaves, I know labels, I know the label of something we call emotion is a label in a story. these
Mm.
things, we call them emotions, this thing that happens of water coming down eyes and things like that. Those are all labels, but it's still happening
Yeah.
without the label, right? So I just am becoming present to what's happening. And there's no purpose in it.
Yeah. That's a big one.
And
So-
there's no meaning to it. Yeah.
So just noticing, Jahida, when you said just noticing, what mental mindset comes for you when you're just noticing? Do you reminding yourself to just
I
notice?
think she said it. She said that bringing my awareness there, or even you said your focus goes there. Those all seem the same thing to me.
Yep.
The focus goes there.
So what's going on in your mind when that's happening?
Well, being that I know this is not a federal call, but being that I'm working with Feder 4 or 5 right now, and you're supposed to stay in the gap, and by that means just noticing those sensations before you react. So that's what I have learned
Yeah. Yeah.
to do. So then I was doing that, and I would sit with that and just be like, oh, I would just like, just feel it, like she was saying. And Jenny does the same thing as me, where it's like, oh, it's here, like, you notice where it is, like in your chest or in your throat, and you're like, oh, you're just, yeah, your focus is there, you're staying. That's how I wrote it on Facebook once. And then Christiane was like, and I've talked about this before, but Christiane was like, well, the point is, and of course there's a point somewhat, because when you're doing with the fetters, it's supposed to be, the fetters are supposed to be helping you unveil something that's,
Yeah.
it's like this lens that you have over something, right? So there is a point kind of to like remove that lens that you're seeing through. But look, so she said the point is not just to stay with that. The point is to then ask yourself or look for something that makes you react. Look for that thing that makes you react, just like you used to look for the me. So like, that's where I am with like the Feder 4 or 5 stuff, because it's like, I'm looking for something that's not there though, so it's kind of weird. I guess when you're staying with it, it's like you notice that there is nothing there to make you react. There is no connection there. And so I guess,
Does that bring about an insight for you when you see that there's nothing to cause you to react in a certain way?
not so far, no. I'm still working with that 4 or 5. I still react.
So when you react,
So
so what
Mhm.
what is the thing that comes up when you react? Do you say, I shouldn't react? I need to do something so that I no longer react to this thing? Or do you say, I'm reacting, isn't that good? I've got something to work with?
like when it's happening, you mean?
Yeah. So first
Yeah, it just
reaction
happens so
says,
fast.
okay, I'm going to work. And then after that reaction, there is another reaction that says, now this is what I want to achieve with that work.
Yeah, honestly, there is something that I want to achieve. I want to achieve that. I want to see through the lens that says, you aren't meeting my expectations. Like, I want to see that that person is doing, they're just doing it, and it's just not even connected to anything. Because I can see that with other things. But we've talked about too, about being a mother, how when it's specifically with your children, it's like there's something deep there that's still, yeah. So still looking, still noticing.
I guess when I get through, sometimes when I say there's clarity, sometimes the clarity is that none of that was real. And that was me making up a story that had me feel like if there's scarcity or insecurity or, so the clarity comes in as the lie, the story that started it was. Like, sometimes the clarity is like, oh, that was a me again. And that's all the clarity says. Oh, that was a me again. Right. So sometimes it's more detailed and sometimes it's just really simple, just seen through on the other side of it. But I don't try to get to the clarity. There's no trying to get anywhere.
So when you, I know for me, when I recognize that there's been a response that is just me selfing again, there's usually nothing to follow that other than, oh, okay, there it happened.
Yeah. There's nothing, there's no purpose in it other than it just plays out. It just blows through.
Yeah.
Where before it used to get stuck.
Yeah.
And it just like blows through because the story and the labels and even the thing we like to call crying or whatever, or all those labels all leave and it's just what is. And then when it goes through, it's like, well, that was a funny cloud that just came through. It's just seen on the other side that it was just a cloud.
Yeah. I guess I have a story that when these things pop up, when I discover that I've done a bit of selfing, that's probably a new thing that's popped up. Well, it's an old thing, but it's new to my current awareness. And that having exposed itself, it's unlikely to come back, at least in the same form. So there is this story in the background that says, eventually I'll get through all of these old bits of these old triggers.
Yeah, that's for me. It's like I've seen through that. This is the experience. And the only reason I would want it not to come back is if I'm labeling it as something wrong. And that labeling that I'm making it wrong is actually what's making it resistance and painful. Right. So when there's no right and no wrong and just these things blow through the body.
Yep.
Then there's no expectation of it that it needs to go anymore.
Yeah, that's a big one. Yeah. So I'd like to explore from what you just said, what comes up. I'd like to explore what resistance is. I keep hearing people that I'm guiding with go, I'm stuck, I'm resisting this, and I can't quite get my head around what resisting actually is.
For me, resistance feels like a contraction in my chest that is calling it bad. Calling it
just
bad.
no, right? No.
Or any kind of should. It should be different. It shouldn't be like this. It shouldn't be.
Right. No to this. Yes, something else should be.
So it's not wanting to be with what is because of the story I have about it, that it should be different, or it's bad, or it's painful, or it's scary. So for me, resistance is this contracted sense of anything but right now.
Yep. So the thing that you just alluded to then that is a big part of the resistance is the physical contraction.
It's caused by mental, though. I think it's still, that physical contraction is still caused by the story I'm saying about this now moment that I don't want for whatever reason.
Oh, yeah. But the first indication you might have that you're resisting something may well be that sensation of contraction.
Yeah. It's my messenger.
Yeah.
Maybe other people come a different way, but sometimes I don't always catch the mental ones. I catch them when they're like more in the body, like it's a full body me. that's showing me. Yeah.
And
my
doesn't that
mental-
resistance, doesn't the resistance come from beliefs that we might not even know that we have, right?
Yeah, and the mental plays with me. It'll say, "Oh, you think that? No, you don't." Blah blah blah, and it'll mess with me. But body doesn't lie. When it's, I know that there's something going on, and my mind can't talk myself out of it. And then I see that my mind is actually the thing that put it there. But it kind of like comes in the back door.
Yeah. Yeah, these things have a way of sneaking up on us. I have a memory of me in the dentist chair, and suddenly I realized that my fists are clenched. So I let them go. I let them open up and relax. And would you know it, a really short time later, they're clenched again, and I have no awareness of them clenching up. I just recognize that here they are clenched again. So I let them go and loosen them and let them, and I'm watching them. And seconds later, they're clenched up again.
Yeah, so anger can be that way too, or fear. It's a clenching of the hands, and I can unclench them, but I haven't gotten to. So instead of relax, breathe, count to 10, slow breathe, nostril, whatever we do to make it unclench, right? So that wasn't working for me, because then the next thing would come by and clenched again.
Yeah.
So now what I'm doing is I'm using the awareness to be with the clench. I don't know how else to explain that. To allow the clench instead of trying to make it go away, and letting go of any stories that come up. Oh, there goes a story. Okay, sometimes there's no stories. When crying happens and there starts to be stories around that, it's like, okay, I don't even need those stories. Just let this happen that we call emotion. And it's allowing the clench to be there and unravel, rather than just unclenching with whatever technique that I'd learned to unclench with.
So do you think there's any value in the recognition that not only that they are stories, but that what the story is about is no longer an adaptive story?
None of them are. They're all BS. All the stories are. But it still comes like kind of like a little tag along with it.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, but it's your story. It's coming out.
Yeah, but it leaves. Yeah, but
history.
it's like it's a tag along. It's like, oh my God, I didn't even know I believed that. Oh my God, that thought. I didn't even know I thought that. Or, well, no wonder I feel that way with what little thought was hanging around. You know? So that's what I mean by these little tag along stories. Just like the emotions are tag along emotions. And I could build a whole story about me crying, or I could just let tears fall and noise, and so, this thing we call crying happen, and I could make up a story. Oh, wow, that was really sad, or that was really this, or that was really, or I could just allow it to move through my body. Where before I would try to calm myself down and do mantras and meditate and breathe slow.
Yeah.
And, which to me is a form of resisting what is.
Yeah. I was thinking bypassing, but yeah.
Yeah.
I'd love to join in this conversation, because I find that I have a perpetual sort of low hum of resistance that is present a lot of the time, because the circumstances, my husband has motor neurone disease, and so it's pretty hard, and I'm pretty busy looking after him, and it's a very difficult situation for him, and sometimes, for example, he would maybe want to do extra things, or a friend will come and say, oh, let's go and do this, and instinctively there is a reaction that comes often of a no, but and underneath it is this resistance of just somehow that there's a belief that that here can't do anything that it wants to do because it has to give everything to the what's at hand, you know, which is a long-term situation. And so, yeah, so there's, I sort of live with that, and I sit with it, and then I say, oh, well, where's the resistance? That's just a thought. And just sit with the sensation, and just, I don't do anything, but it sometimes it raises its head in this no instead of, and so then it's like, okay, it would be nicer, it would be better if it would be like a maybe instead of just a no, because often after a while the response will be, oh well, okay then, you know. But that pattern just does tend to be sort of always there at the present.
It sounds like you could have two patterns playing against each other. One is I have to always be there, and I should be resisting. And if you can separate those two and sit with the sensations of either one as separate things, I should always be there. Is that true? And then feel, and then I shouldn't be resisting this because I should always be there. And then these two play off each other as a couple, and you separate them and sit with each one.
That's very, very astute. Yeah. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense.
And I saw you say something that the label resignation popped into my head.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a lot of value in a certain kind of surrender, but it's not in that resignation one. So
no, because resignation is too close to, in a way, there's resistance in the resignation. It's like, yeah.
In fact, resignation is actually quite aggressive.
Yeah.
You could look
no,
at
definitely I understand that, and it's just that I recognize the resistance. It's just sort of like and also the control of, I have to be there, I have to be doing, you know, making sure everything's under control. I mean, that's a big issue.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
You know, and so I just work with it sort of when it seems to come up, and take away any labels. Oh, I'm resisting this, or I just sort of sit with the feeling when I can take the times for myself to,
of course,
just sit with it.
So when you see that resignation might be present, it would be a really productive possibility to consider if you could change the resignation into an invitation. So if that surrender was an inviting, willing surrender, not a resigned giving up, but rather a recognition that, isn't it good when shit happens because we got something to work with?
Yeah.
And also feeling what's actually happening and being able to not, uncombine these things that seem like one thing is for me, it's learning to be authentic with what's happening. Because I wasn't authentic because I thought I should be.
Yes.
A different way. Life should look different. I should be Saint Jenny Jesus is what I used to call myself. And, so being really present with the authentic story that's causing these feelings and then unraveling.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an ongoing, definitely.
Yeah, the thing that we struggle with to a degree is that we don't have control. Decisions happen, choices happen, but they're not something that we're in control of. So whatever comes up is whatever comes up, and it's almost like we have a choice to respond to that in a certain way, and we want to find the right way. We want to find a productive way to respond to that. But being relaxed enough to not corrupt it, to allow it to flow in whatever way that it wants to flow, if you kind of get my drift, is the most revealing, is where the insights are likely to come from. Yeah.
Yeah, I was controlling, but I didn't see, like you're saying, Vince, is we don't have a choice on decisions and options, but there is an awareness that watches the pattern happen. And when I watched the pattern happen, I was controlling who this character was supposed to be, called a nice person. And when I saw that pattern, then behavior shifted because I saw the pattern. The pattern became conscious.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And there is a pattern. That's something that our uniqueness is kind of expressed in patterns unique to us, so our own, we always respond to this situation in this particular way, kind of pattern. Recognizing those things is a big one too. So if we, I'm stating the obvious here to a degree, but if we recognize that an emotion is a sensation with stories attached to it, and we can separate the stories from the sensation, things change, really, just by doing that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, one thing for me, when crying could happen without a story, there was a lot of pressure in the body that the story was causing. And so when it was allowed, because the story was let go of, and then even the story of what water on the face means.
Yeah.
It's like all that squeezed energy is released.
Yeah. So you separated the sensation from the story. And see that the tricky thing with stories validate sensation, and sensations validate stories. So it can be a really circular thing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So staying in awareness so that it sees the little stories that are spinning off these sensations and emotions and labels, and so it's staying in awareness as the pattern unravels in front of me.
Yeah.
And then the control of suppressing these emotions is released, and the stories may burp up with them or not, but it's staying aware during it so that I'm watching it all unravel.
So maybe just the decoupling is all we really need to allow those things to go their own way, so to speak. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really, yeah. And the decoupling actually can happen while it's happening too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
As soon as we don't get in the road of it.
Yeah, and so is it going to ever happen again? I don't know. I could walk down the street, story, boom, boom, feelings, right? So,
Okay, and then another one that I is a reoccurring theme for me is that we don't have to know what the story is about. We can just recognize that there is a story there without knowing the actual story itself. We don't need to, mind will certainly try and convince us that if we go down the rabbit hole of the story, we'll get satisfaction, but that's a lie. That's mind lying to us. But it can happen. And if it does happen, if we see the origin of the story, there can be a great satisfaction that comes along with it as we say goodbye to it. But it's not necessary to see the actual details of the story. Just knowing that there's a story attached to it can be enough to decouple them.
Yeah. Sometimes it just feels like a string of words, like in a dream, like I'm not paying attention as they leave. It's like not interesting, but I can see the words. And if I was to grab them and pull them back, I could make a story out of it. If you guys know what I mean, it's kind of like there's not enough attention on them other than I have a sense that that's a story. But it's not interesting. Now, they're not all like that. Some of them were like, oh, wow. Oh, okay, that's not true. Actually, but some of them aren't even interesting to do that with.
It seems like when I started to notice, like doing a lot of looking, it seems like my actual experience is there's a sensation first. And then, oh, that must mean this. Rather than there's this, and now there's a sensation, which I thought it was the opposite always. But when I looked at it, like so a couple of things happened, like a snake came by and I didn't know that a snake was that close to my foot. Like I didn't see it visually, right? Until my body, I jumped, right? Out of the way. And then I turned around and said, oh, there's a snake. And I don't want a snake to be by my foot. And that doesn't feel very good. I told somebody about it. And I thought, oh, that's just like your reaction system because we're humans and that's very primal and it's your body's gonna like save you or something, like so you don't get eaten by the lion, right? But then I had the experience of like texting my son about going to lunch. I sent the text and then I noticed there was a lot of feelings before the answer came back, or a lot of sensations, I'll say. For a long time, a lot of sensations. Then the story started to come. He hasn't texted me back. He doesn't want to go to lunch with his mother. What does that mean? I was having a mother, right? But none of that actually happened, right? That was a story. But and maybe you answered it, Vince, by saying it's a loop. But the experience for me right now is more like it's the body, the body, the body. And then the mind just says some stuff later, may or may not say some stuff later. So I don't know if that's anybody else's experience.
No, that's my experience too now, is that it'll be a sensation and then I'll watch the mind start to tell something about it and I just kind of ignore it a lot of times now, but I'll just be with the sensation. Like I'll just won't let it go out to that feed. So I'm finding that too, that the sensations spin a story. And sometimes it happens so quick afterwards that it seems that they're happening at the same time, or even the thought happened first.
Yeah.
But the more I am aware of it, the more it's the sensations spinning stories.
Well, the sensation is a sensation, but the mind gets involved and spins the story.
Yeah.
I
That's
always
what I mean.
thought it was, I always would have described it the other way though. I would say I thought this, or I got a story about this, and then I felt bad.
Yeah, it's a bit of a tricky one because we're kind of jumping into the sequence of events when the sensations occur, and then we're watching the stories that come along that are attached to that sensation. But they're attached afterwards, the ones we're looking at. Whereas the sensation itself was the result of a story first. Okay, but we the reason we've got the sensation is because that story is itself a buried story. It's we're not conscious of it at all. So one story I have about that might be that it was a behavior that we learned before we were, say, 4 years old. And when our brain pruned a whole lot of unnecessary stuff at the age of 4.5 or whatever, that actual story itself got dismissed. It went away. But we don't need it anymore. That's why it went away, because it was hardwired by that stage.
Programmed in the unconscious.
Yeah. So, for example, there is lots of YouTube videos out there of young kids, really, really young kids with snakes, and they're not at all concerned about the snakes. They're crawling in amongst them. They're not frightened of a snake. But somewhere along the way, we become hardwired so that even if we see a green water hose in the garden, we'll jump out of the way thinking it's a snake. Our body reacts just as Jana said, because we've hardwired that story.
Yeah. It's an automatic program now.
Yep.
Which is
Yeah.
why we don't make these choices we make. It's all
Yeah.
hardwired, but awareness can see the hardwiring as it comes up.
Yeah. So, well, we don't need to, excuse me. We don't need to recreate the words of the story, the original story. We probably don't even need to acknowledge that there's a story behind that initial reaction. But I don't remember why I brought it up. There's some reason why I brought it up, that there is that thing behind it that is always.
But once you're with the vibration, it just doesn't really matter what story imprinted it.
Yeah, that's right. No, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what story imprinted it. But when we decouple the story that follows with the sensation, it may well be that we're also decoupling the original story, cause the sensation.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a bit of a dead end track. I don't know why I went down that one.
No, it was actually no, I didn't think it was dead end at all. I think I'm like, no, enough said, mic drop, you know? Yeah. Yeah.
Hi, Maria. I wanted you to talk. Because I saw what you wrote on Facebook. Can you talk?
It's not here right now, but what would you like me to talk about?
Well,
The urge
there
to
was
talk, I mean,
something
it's
that,
not here.
okay, yeah, there was something that I wrote about. We both commented on one of Christiane's posts, and you said something like, this kind of thing's not really out there. Like, I wish they would offer, I wish there was like more of like non-dual speaker that would speak more to this specifically regarding children. Yeah, and you use like you use some letters to stand for something else, and I didn't know what it was.
I cannot remember at all what I've written. I have to look back at my Facebook now.
Does one of your children, is one of your children diagnosed with something?
Oh, ND. Did I put ND on it?
Oh,
Neurodiverse.
neurodiverse. Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, that was the
Yes.
one.
That was a tough day. So there's been resonance with what's been discussed today about what's emerging in the moment. And yeah, I mean, yeah, how easy is it to keep the zen and the calm when you've been physically attacked? And what Christian's response really resonated. We don't have to be a doormat. So yeah, it brought what I knew already back into an apparent need for validation. We don't have to be a doormat, and there's a lot of misconception, isn't there? Often about remaining zen and being calm has been the end goal. This is not my life, yet there is presence. Yeah, there is presence. I think the challenge for me, what I'm noticing is the lack of time to actually create space for these things. I'm hearing people talk about sensations, and they happen so fast. Awareness is there, noticing and disarming the phenomenon. It doesn't mean that the story stops playing. And that's all I can do with the limited time I have. I don't know if you resonate with that, Jahaira, being a mum.
Yeah, I've said that before, how like, if my kids are like fighting, I'm supposed to just stay with the sensation. How do I stay with the sensation and help them at the same time? Like,
Yeah.
because it's like, oh no, there's that resistance. Or maybe it's not like, I mean, I guess, right after I woke up, I could see that, oh, there could be something crazy happening, and I could still react in whatever or respond is more accurate, right? Because when that's the difference, right? Because your body is naturally instinctually responding, as opposed to, oh, I need this thought to help me control what to do next, like as if I need
or
these
react.
thoughts.
I tend to be very much feet on the ground. I fucking react, but I see it as a reaction, and I see the unfolding, and the return back to what isness. It's continuously there. But I react. I'm not going to hide behind my finger. I'm going to be authentic and honest in my exploration. There is reaction. There is reaction that's happening. There's fear, and there is an instant recognition of what's occurring in the moment. Hiya. Why was I saying that? There's, what am I projecting? There is, ego is scared. That's what keeps coming back. Ego is terrified lately of its vanishing, and that sort of sense of fear comes in different ways, in my experience. Like thoughts about death reoccurring, and there's an inner recognition that this is the ego's way of holding its grip. I don't know if people resonate with that at all.
Yeah.
Or dreams about death, and distraction is a big one as well at the moment. What's emerging and that's been witnessed. Distractions through. Distractions, just so many distractions. So I hear people talk about the fetter system. I don't know what that system is. I'm not familiar with that. So the common practice experience here is noticing what's emerging and letting it flow. So when we talk about children, Jahaira, and there's a conflict or a friction or whatever is happening, I'll stay in presence and awareness as much as I can. And when that involves a lot of physical aggression or distraction, I'll keep the safeties, how awareness is expressed, safety first. I'm not going to let my child distract the house or himself. And then when the wave sort of relaxes, I just find myself needing to have cry happening, as Jenny was saying, you know, tears needing to come out, and then roll on, move on to the next moment. So that's how life flows these days. I don't have much time to sit and do this talk that we're doing now. And in actual fact, what's emerged for me as I logged in, I was like, I'm fed up. I'm tired of joining these groups. I don't need it. I don't need it. That's what emerged. And I'm trying to discern if that's resistance or if that is actually, do I really need these groups? That's where I am at the moment. You know, that's what's genuinely coming up. So any input on that would be very welcome.
I have, what that reminded me of, and there's a couple of things you were talking about, staying zen and don't have to be a doormat. And you know, and I thought about like martial arts. I watched different types of movies, and I'm thinking that the characters, you know, and they're really expert. It's almost like they are calm and zen as they use their tools to protect themselves, to stop people from harming them. So I don't have that experience with anybody, so I'm not talking from experience. It's just that image came up for me. And what I just thought of, Maria, when you were saying that you had that thought of I don't need these groups, is I'm in a group that's local here in California, and we would get together for potlucks and stuff, but I met them online. It's called Connecting Consciousness, and they're actually global. And I have found and I love preparing food and doing potlucks, right? And when I first started doing it, it was just so great and everything. And I was supposed to go yesterday, and I had the food made, and I had the directions to the house. And by Friday, I'm not called to go. It is not resonating with me. I don't know why, but I'm not called to go. So I'm not going to go. And so that's what came up when you were saying, I don't need these groups. I can't speak for you, but I found that for me, if I find that I'm not called to go, to honor that, but I felt very calm about it. That was my experience.
Sure. Yeah. So what you're sharing is inviting me to just return in and really say honestly, what is it? And maybe there's a grain of doubt coming in, which is very familiar pattern in me, in my story, this story, doubt, which always had the story of you know, don't be too quick to know, or don't be arrogant, you know, be open. That was a big one. Remain open. So there is a new story emerging now that's going almost perhaps another story in the story. As I'm talking now, I'm saying it. That says, you know, trust your intuition. You know, discern. You know, that's probably another story in the story, but in the right direction, hopefully. So yeah.
I see that because we don't really, we're going to do what we do. So you'll either be on or you won't be on. And the story makes up a narrative about it. And living life is what shows us our story. So you may not come for a couple times, and then the mind will tell you a different story. And then you may show up, and then the mind will tell you a different story. And the mind's just going to keep narrating what you do as right or wrong, or should or shouldn't, and I should, or maybe I won't, or maybe I don't feel like it, or I resonate or I don't. It's just a commentary. Your body will show up here or it won't. And then a new choice will be made, and then a new choice will be made, and the pattern just keeps making it. So the presence is what's namaste. The awareness, who we really are, that calm is not So I can be angry, taking care of my kids or whatever, my dog, whatever it is. Now I'm starting to wake up the body, because before I had to shut down those sensations while I dealt with it. Now I'm learning to go ahead and have these sensations, and they don't have to dictate that I'm going to yell at my kid or my dog, because I can feel my pulsing. So I'm starting to like merge it all together so it can be happening, because before I would have to control it and set aside a time to do it. And now I'm learning to bring it into, because it is what's happening if it wasn't being suppressed and controlled. And just, it can happen. Doesn't mean I'm going to yell at my dog or my kid.
Yeah.
It means I'm still going to do what I do, only now I'm aware of the heart pounding and all these things that are feeling. And if I can contain that without pattern reacting and yelling or throwing something, then that's awareness. It's still awareness of what's happening and what is. And then the story is what narrates it.
So what comes up for me is that no matter what is happening, it's this.
Yes. Yeah.
And if it's unpleasant, there's value in that too.
Yeah. That resonates. Yeah.
So let's say we've got the scenario where we're yelling. We're yelling at our kid or our dog or whatever. And halfway through yelling, if there's such a place, but we're in the midst of yelling, we realize what we're doing. What happens when we realize, that moment that we realize? It changes, doesn't it?
So, yeah, and as you're talking, Vince, what's coming up is the recognition, which softens it actually. The recognition that this softening is emerging as shame in the moment. So that's the portal to this.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. Yeah. Yeah.
I spent so much of my life thinking that I was supposed to be calm. And the truth is who I really am is calm all the time. But this may not be.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a very potent inner knowing of this, Jenny, and occasional forgetting, but the forgetting is also witnessed in the moment as forgetting. So I don't know how much forgetting that is.
Yeah.
It isn't then. If it's seen as forgetting, then it's not forgetting, is it? It's remembering. So, but that's constant because of the neurodiversity, and that is a story. I'm very aware that this is a story, right? I mean, my child. Not even my child, but anyway, my child, woke up a couple of months ago, and he said to me, "Mommy," because we were reading a book the night before, a philosophy. Just happened to read a book on philosophy and talk about reality. So he went in bed with the question, how do we know we're real? That was the question that sort of came up. So I didn't think anything of it. And then the next morning he wakes up and says, I think I've answered my own question, because I sent him away to think about the question. So what? All right, I sort of forgot about what question he meant. And then in the morning we're brushing our teeth, and he said, I got the answer, Mum. I think I'm somebody and nobody at the same time. I was like, whoa, okay.
Oh, yeah. Out of the
As
mouth of babes, eh?
So why I'm saying that, because there is a true sense of inner knowing, and I don't know where I know that from. I don't need to know that actually what appears as neurodiversity is such a dense life force, and maybe that's a story I'm making for him, that it just doesn't have the space to fit in the small physical body of an 8-year-old, and that's what causes that eruptions. His consciousness is really, on some level he really gets it, and until his body catch up with that state of consciousness where he's at. That's how I've explained that for him, which is a similar story that I've explained for me, you know, growing up in a way. But when, you know, you're thrown items and you're in the midst of it all, it's fucking hard
Yeah.
to stay as awareness. You know, yeah, it can feel hard. It can feel really hard at times.
Yes, for me, the awareness would come after the fact. And then pretty
Mm.
soon I could actually stay aware in the middle of it. And then pretty
Yes.
soon, you know, I would actually start it and I'd go, wait a minute. And then, you know, walk away and breathe or something. And then I could start catching it. But it was still awareness, watching the mechanism of the pattern.
Yeah.
Awareness was always calm.
Mm.
Awareness, watching.
Yeah. I'm really passionate about this whole topic at the moment because of what I'm living day in and day out about that non-duality and motherhood, and feel really passionate in, and I know the answer to this, in offering him that as a concept. But I know that the only way to offer it is by embodying it myself and being that. However, that doesn't stop the desire of wanting to talk or something to come from this place for him, obviously. And yeah, and the way of mitigating that for me is writing about it. Writing is a portal for me. It just seems that in through the writing, whatever comes is it's a return to source.
Yeah, it's a clarification. One thing that occurred to me as you were talking there for both you and Jahida is the recognition that that part of the brain, that the prefrontal cortex there, where we might modify our behavior because of consequences, that part of the brain isn't developed in people until they're in their early 20s. So when we take an 8-year-old and we expect them to think ahead to see the consequences of what they do, that's kind of crazy, eh? They haven't got the ability, the physical ability.
That's what I'm trying to tell my husband, Vince. Keeps yelling and snapping at my little boy.
I mean, I don't have that ability. That ability is leaving me more and more and more. I don't know if people resonate. I don't know if you resonate with that, Vince. And memory. Oh my God. It's like, what? How? And then fears come. How will I function? I'm on mat leave at the moment. How will I go back to lecture and do my teaching? And actually, what experience shown me is that my teaching just flows. It's just with no planning, and it's the opposite. But yeah, that. But how do you run a family of 3 without planning? So I'm stuck in those fetters of responsibility and control and choice. This is the bit that is being chipping away bit by bit. I'm finding. Yeah. Thanks for the invitation, Jahira. Something in me really did say something in the end, but it wasn't there when you brought it in.
I'm happy that you came. I know it's, you know, the baby and stuff.
She's sleeping here next to me. I had a whole night's sleep last night, because I delegated to my husband, so I'm more rested today.
I love hearing about how you mothers deal with all of this, because it seems like just yesterday my boys were little, and it's just, I think it's really important, some of the lessons you guys are teaching them. Even though, as Vince said, good point, we cannot expect an 8-year-old to really get this. And yet, look at what he told you, right? I'm nobody and somebody, like they come out with all these little wisdoms that are so amazing. And you realize you learn from.
Oops. She hung up on herself.
Gone, yeah.
Oh, somebody we lost here.
He had a pretty shaky internet anyway, I think.
Yeah.
That's got
Oh,
fuck to
there
do
you
with
are.
me. That's his soul. That's his conscious. That's got nothing to do with me. Oh my god. Yeah.
Yeah, Diana, I just wanted to say that, like, when I have talked on other calls about it, and oh, it was last week that, like, I started off the call by saying what's important, because I think that the belief that I have that this is important, the way I raise my kids is important, that's what's fucking me up, really. Like, or that's what's causing the suffering still. Like, that's the belief that's leading to the reaction, that's so yeah. I don't want it to be important. I want
In
to
the
just
day
see that
today,
this is how they are. This is what's happening. And I want to come from an authentic place raising them without
yes,
believing that my thoughts need to direct me to be a good mother because this is important. Because I could see right after I woke up when I was still in that honeymoon phase that, like, well, naturally, this is, this is all perfect. And so I can't get it wrong. And everything's coming from this heart love place that, like, I never needed to worry. I didn't worry about it ever. So I can see that there are still beliefs in place that make me kind of maybe worry and want to control this. Yeah.
I can see a big difference from when I think like I first saw you on one of these groups and how much the mothering was worrying you. Like you're in a completely different place today. So I
Oh,
guess what I
yeah.
meant
And it was
about it
because
being
of
important is just, yeah, of what, sorry? Right.
Oh, it was
Yeah.
because I kept
Um,
coming that I wake up.
exactly.
Mm.
Like it is perfect the way it is. And yet the more conscious you become, you can see that some of the insights you have, how it will affect your parenting.
She's gone again.
Do I dare talk or I'll disappear? Yeah. Well, watching myself live through a belief
Hello?
that
Yeah,
I'm
every
a
time I
good
talk, I lose
mom.
connection.
She back?
The universe is telling us
Yeah, I
something.
don't know
I'm
why
just
that's
kidding.
happening. I know.
I'm
Like
just
maybe I
kidding.
should shut up. Yeah, it's funny, right? Like I'm waving my phone around and then it comes back.
Oh, yeah, no. It looks
I
like your
can't
thing is
love.
frozen.
But
Maybe if
the
you turn off your camera.
parenting thing, oh, I'm gonna put it back here. Every time I move it to talk is when I lose it. So I'm just gonna leave it right there.
Is your phone connected up to the house Wi-Fi, Diana, or are you just using mobile?
Yeah, but I'm in like a little shed I have in the back of my house. The internet was really good, but I think with all the rains we're having, it's just breaking up a bit.
Right.
So
Or
it
if you
seems
just
like when
turn
I
off your
move it,
camera,
just
it might be better.
yeah. But I kind of
Sometimes
like
that helps. I don't know.
Mhm.
What were you going to say, Jenny?
Oh, I was saying that I remember when I woke up in the middle of trying to be a good mom, the story of what a good mom and all the repercussions of that good mom. But the cool thing is then I would feel like bad about that. But then when I actually sat in just the awareness, I just watched that character go through this growing lesson of being a good mom and controlling, and then the repercussions of, oh no, now if you don't behave this way, that means I wasn't a good mom. That whole story wrapped around that. And then the waking up as the character realized that she was trying to be a good mom and stopped trying to be like a good mom, and just started being present with the child in the moment. And I can actually see that happening, this character's progress through motherhood. And because it's just, there's no blame anymore, there's no guilt, it's innocence. is just watching the movie of the character as she went through that motherhood story. So even trying to be a good mom isn't wrong. Like the whole thing is just watched.
Yeah, it's all just as is. It's all neutral. It's all just what's right. It's how everybody says, it's all just what's happening. Like, it's like, that's just happening. There is no no.
And even if there's no, then that's part of what's happening. It's just this
Oh.
cool still shots, you know,
Okay.
of the story of Jenny learning how to be not a good mom, you know?
Okay, yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's good.
But yet when you got triggered by your husband not like shouting at your kid, like I completely get that too. And that's what you should do as well. Like that's just part of this. And you saw that and you were correct, I'm sure. So like it's necessary to do that, you know, and maybe in another family situation, let's say you weren't as aware, that wouldn't happen. And then that child will get a little emotional scar. That's why I started talking about that show. And it's all like that. It really is what's this, but somehow as we become more aware, more conscious, whatever, there is like, it seems to go better because you can just go with the flow. And your intuition was saying that your husband shouldn't at that moment shouted at your kids. And that's right, I think. It's more like, I don't know, life affirming. I don't know.
It's like everything. It's like it's right and it's not, because there's judgment and there's not. It's kind of like presence awareness, watching human evolution or this character's evolution, the world evolution, because that's a story. It's a movie. And then there's the right and wrong judgments of that. Don't kill and don't yell at your kid right there to come in it. But that's just what's happening too. So it's like it's all just happening, but it's kind of like watching evolution of the character as it goes through. And in the end, it doesn't all matter. None of it matters. It's all, so it's both, right?
So in the end, why doesn't it matter?
It doesn't matter because it's what happened.
Because what?
Because it's what happened. So
there's no judgment that it mattered, good or bad.
I feel like I'm tripping.
Yeah, it's the way it unfolded.
It's like the weaving.
Yeah, it's just the way it unfolded. So we make it matter, but in the end, none of it matters because it's how it unfolded. It's what happened. It's just what happened. And even our memory of it, how it happened, isn't how it happened. So
I had a hard time reconciling the bad things that happened with this because I was like, yeah, but think of all these horrible things that happen every day and animals and children getting abused and like, why does it have to be that way? But it's just what you said though. But all those things are playing out because of all the different decisions people are making.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what Jeff helped me see too, that like your thoughts can only see a sliver of this totality. So how can your thought be accurate to it being right or wrong? It can't see the fucking totality of everything that's included in this, whatever this is.
And even the memories are cloudy. Even the memories are colored. So we don't even know what we're remembering because they're colored too.
And they're also just a thought too. They're also a concept at this point, right? So
and
they're not accurate.
Yeah, so if it's just the way humanity is evolving or not, that could be a story too. And the end of it is, it's just what's happening. Nothing changes it. Even our memory of it isn't correct. And it's just what's happening. And then we have all these judgments of right and wrong, which is fine because it is and it isn't. It's fine to have the judgment. I'm not going to yell at my kid in that moment. But in the end, that's just what happened. It's just the mechanics of the what's happening.
So I have a story here that's relevant to this. And this story goes that I remember as a child, and I don't know how old I was, and I was probably about to get a belting by my father. And if I was young enough, it would have been with the razor strap, which a lot of you guys wouldn't even know what it is anymore, but it was a wide belt, very wide belt that used to sharpen the razor on. Well, that was what I got belted with as a child by my father. And I remember in fear or or anticipation of being belted or something. I remember shouting at my father, "I won't treat my kids the way you treat me."
Wow.
Yeah. Now my kids, my youngest is my daughter, who is now 53, and my oldest is my son, who's 55. And I didn't treat my kids the way my parents treated me, but I also did treat them the way they treated me. And at this end of life, I've got a son who's pretty laid back, and I've got a daughter who's a stress head. And for all of my good intentions and my skill or lack of skill, they turned out the way they turned out. It's almost like it had nothing to do with me. As much as what I wanted for them was for them to be really together people. I wanted for them. Yeah.
I was going to say, I'm not together, but I want that for my kids. Isn't that something? and the thing there is this, like, I was seeing that I had a perception of my kid, my son, that I had messed him up by not being a good enough mother. Now I am emitting this perception. No matter what I say, he's got to be feeling it, because we're all connected, right? So basically I'm telling him, you're fucked up and it's my fault. And where that was, and he's not. So he's an amazing, brilliant, success, just amazing, right? When my perception isn't filtered through the kind of mother I should have been, so he would have turned out to be the son he should have been, and nobody's fucked up. We all are. We all are. It's the human
Condition.
Yeah.
It is. And so the awareness is watching this human dynamic happen. And as I become, or as I'm, how do I say it? More aware of being aware, more awake. I don't know how to even describe it. And I look at how I kept trying to jump through this perfection hoop. And when I didn't, well, then neither did my son, and how all this behaving, how you're supposed to behave to make sure that I'm a successful mother and you're a successful son. And the stories around that, he's perfect. And so is this character perfect, other than the thought that it's not, because of some programming of what perfect is supposed to look like, of all namaste and roses and smiles and happy, and this other stuff, oh, that's not allowed, right? What if it's all perfect?
And
It's
and
all-
its uniqueness, right?
Yeah, this
Unique.
yin-yang.
Right.
Yeah. And sure, we may have this intention of progressively being kinder, but when we start controlling that and bottling that up and making it have to look a certain way out there, or even in here, when Saint Jenny Jesus is kind, the whole world will be kind, and they'll be kind to me. And this it's very controlling and one-sided and limited and
Dangerous, I'd say.
And
I'd go as far to say it could be
well, what happens
for future generations. That isn't that the cost of this suppression that we're paying now as the collective body?
Yeah, so everybody's suppressing their authentic expression because of what we're supposed to be good people and peaceful people and all that. Because awareness, my experience of awareness is it's unconditional. And I can't even say it's love, because love is like something that humans have put a tag on, so that has too much meaning, but it's unconditional to me. And in the unconditional awareness, when I'm aware of all these stories that tell me that I'm not good enough, all this stuff, whatever, when I'm just aware of it, that awareness is unconditional. It's the thoughts that aren't unconditional. And when that character takes those conditional thoughts and suppresses what it's not supposed to be, the awareness just still watches that with love, with awareness, with the unconditional, while the character gets it sorted out with awareness. It's like a team. I don't know. It's like a team. And it's hard to describe, but you guys all know what I mean, right?
So what the hell we're doing here gathering? If we-
Nobody needs this. Nobody needs, we don't need it. And for some reason, we're drawn here, and we can make up stories on why we should be here or shouldn't be here, or show up or not show up. We do until we don't, and then we do again until we don't again, and nobody needs it.
And it's better than Netflix, let's face it.
Yeah. Bye.
I can't watch anything. I don't know about if that resonates. I just
Yeah, it's pretty amazing how many of the shows that are offered to us follow the same lines, and they're kind of not very rewarding to watch them.
I don't watch TV much either, but since I've taken on this, whatever I see that affects me is something in me
Mirror.
that can be integrated. So if I'm not drawn to it, I don't watch it. And if I do find myself looking at it, then I'm like, well, okay, there's something drawn to this. There's something that's really, really, if it's activating me anyway.
the
And sometimes-
one and only obsession that keeps repeating itself here is all to do with consciousness. You used that word in one of the previous meetings, Vince, and that stayed with me. That you had obsession and perseverance. I think you used those two words to describe part of your journey, and that really, I mean, since I remember me being little, that obsession, discover the truth without even knowing what this truth was back then. Well, I knew because I've been here all along, but the conscious mind, and it's almost like I've done this whole loop. I went out to do a psychotherapy course. That was a big portal. Then a sound healing course. That was another portal. Then I want to do PhD in awareness. I mean, what a topic to understand awareness. It's laughable looking back. And then when the awakening happens, all of that just dropped. But this obsession is coming. I don't know. It's returning at a very accelerated speed at the moment. That's what's. And there is a bit of a sort of watching, so it doesn't become another grasping. So there's something about the spiritual seeker, which all seekings left me after that happened, just dropped. And the only thing that keeps returning, but it's returning a bit more with the momentum now. So I don't know what that's about.
Yeah.
So I used to be big into, doing all workshop, shamanic, ecstatic dance, do this, do that. Not to look for anything, just for pure joy of participating in.
But it was a certain kind of participation, a certain unfettered release kind of participation.
Release, that resonates. Yes, it was a release of some sort, and then I had a very I guess looking back, it was perhaps something had dissolved. There was this joy honeymoon period. There was a lot of special skills arriving with that spontaneous Kundalini awakening, all of that kind of these stories, and then a deep dark night of the soul. And it was only after that dark night of the soul that things dissolved. So just staying with that, and I was pregnant with my second child. Actually, I remember feeling noticing suicidal thoughts and really having a strong inner knowing. It was like a deep conviction actually of the awakening that had happened before, that actually I'm not my thoughts, this is not me, in the suicidality. So, and it's only looking back, although in the moment it felt really strong, it was like, that's not me. So it was a very strong test. And only through that time, then and moving beyond that time, through that time, things just dissolved. It was like, where is the anxious me gone? Where is the, well, I was preparing for my lectures and I was like taking on a new module and I was like, what is going on? This there's no anxiety was like my story. It's like that's who I've known myself to be all along. And since that time, it's like I've entered what, I don't know if it's a spiritual inertia sort of phase, or there's something else that's brewing as a process. Yeah, there's no much desire to mingle socially, but at the same time, a big resentment is emerging recently, that I've left my life aside because family life is taking over. That's what I'm trying um, to crack at the moment.
Mhm.
Resentment, like surges of resentment, and the way that it sort of releases itself is through rumblings on Facebook. When the clarity comes, it has to express itself somewhere. It gives me a sense of I haven't forgotten me.
Yep.
So there's a bit of fragmentation happening, maybe in family life being other than this. And
So at one stage, you had a fairly detailed and clear idea of your life's trajectory, and
yeah, it feels like
interrupted.
there's something bigger here that needs to give. And but I felt that for many, 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 many years since I remember me. Since years on end. And
So as a
I
child,
don't have a picture of what that look like, or all I know is that keeps returning, keeps coming back, keeps.
so as a teenager, did you have an idea of how you would be as an adult that was different to the way you are now?
No, the only thing, I mean, I've had lots of experiences and memories of walking and having that sense of empty. I remember very vividly walking on the street and asking the question, who is walking? And finding nobody, a real clear, and many, many moments like that.
Yep. Yeah.
But then I remember going to study for psychotherapy. That was my training, and feeling at home because the first lecture was about love. At the time, it was through the trajectory of acquiring an identity. So, and now that identity is just dissolving into something different anyway. Yeah. I didn't have any picture. No, I didn't have any.
Yep.
Apart from the fire, that inkling that there's something bigger. It's.
So when you experience the resentment,
Yeah.
how can you paint us a picture of what the resentment originate? Where does the resentment come out from?
It's a story of self-abandonment. I'm abandoning myself.
Yep.
Um,
So you're a traitor to yourself, but because you're giving yourself to your family.
I'm giving all of me to my family, and there's nothing left for me. So there's fear there that I'll be swallowed into the family
Yep.
life, and
And it's all
which on
encompassing, isn't it?
it is, yeah, it is. And within that, I'm experiencing these sweet moments of surrender, and that feels really liberating. Are there not as many as I'd like, or
Yeah.
yeah. Or finding the time to write. That's what keeps returning. It's like the clarification is what keeps burning.
Mm.
The clarification is burning hotter and hotter and hotter. Wanting, I don't know if it's a want. Something feels really strong. I can't even define it. I can't define it.
Mm. I get the
But
feeling of you being split.
yeah.
But there's two of you.
Yes, maybe there's some fragmentation. That's what I'm keep coming back to, that split. There's a split somewhere, and maybe that's the spiritual seeker that I thought was dead, but maybe still here, hanging on a little bit. It's
Or it could
manifesting. Yeah,
Uh,
Jenny.
Or it could be that now that you're awake, you're actually witnessing that pattern of the me who says, I'm leaving myself behind. You're starting to witness the mechanics of it arising so it can be uncoupled.
In many ways, though, I do feel I am abandoning myself. I can't explain it. I am leaving myself, and that is so doing what I'm doing now. It's fantastic. It feeds my soul. The way it's manifesting is, the clarification, writing about the motherhood and the non-dual. There's words that want to come out. Or things to be said through the voice, through the dialogue, through the discussions, through the conversations with people, which is why I'm currently looking for a guide to do that on a more one-to-one basis. I can't reconcile. I can't find peace in this place where I'm at the minute as much as I would have. Well, that's a story, isn't it? Yeah, the story.
Or just being with the peace, and rather than being with the lack of peace.
Yes.
Instead of hunting how to get rid of it, like just sit with that lack of peace and how that feels. Lack of peace feel like, my resistance to lack of peace, instead of trying to get peace or sort this out, figure out an answer or put myself together, but just sit with what is, which is stations we call lack of peace, and the thought and the story of lack of peace, and just being with that as the what's happening.
In the story of the ADHD, let's say, in the relative sense, the symptoms of the ADHD seem exploding right now. And when I tune into that, that's what I said at the beginning. It feels like there's something big going on or about to happen, and the ego is freaking out. So, I don't know. I can't.
So just be with that and don't try to make sense of it, because that's the what's happening. And then the mind tries to make sense and resolve it and figure it out. And
to be fair, I don't really have much time to do that. It's only now that we're in dialogue that trying to make sense of it. In the moment, it just happens. Noticing next moment. Honestly, life is so busy, so fast speed. There's little time to. So actually, yeah.
So it occurs to me, Maria, that you could allow yourself to be two people at the same time. And that the organism is so clever and so complex that you could easily be two people at the moment. So a lot of what I fully understand what you say about time. I have the same thing, in a different way, of course, but yeah, that is that life is so busy that it feels like there's not time to do a lot of things, especially self-nurture things, where I want to be just sit and be by myself, and there's just too much going on to do that all the time. Yeah. But you can allocate a part of you to do that, to sit and be by yourself, while the other part of you is busy being a mother and a wife and whatever. You're quite capable of running both those things together at the same time.
Yeah, and I feel it's driving me mad at the moment. That's it feels like it's running its steam. It's I don't know. I don't know how. It feels like it's coming to an end. Like I want it to come to an end, but I feel I can't sustain this. There's something needs to shift. Something needs to
Cool.
crack open.
Yeah. So I don't imagine for a moment that you're just going to abandon your family and go off and live in a cave by yourself somewhere.
I have noticed stories emerging for that on a fantasy
Yep.
level. Yeah.
And they could be comforting stories too. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's part of the resentment is that you can't do that. You're required to be here, But a lot of what you're doing when you're here, a lot of what you're doing as a mother and a wife, etc., as a parent, that can happen fairly automatically. That's not to say that you're going to do it without awareness, but a lot of it's repetitious stuff. You don't need to think about it. You just do it. You're getting somebody's meal together. You're just doing it. You're breastfeeding your baby. You're just doing it. But because you're just doing it, there's a whole segment of you that's available to do other things. So you could be composing in your mind or even dictating to your phone while you're breastfeeding.
These are absolutely ideas that have come to me, Vince, from this place of awareness, but there isn't even time for that. And that's why the fire keeps burning, So I've begun so many things, from writing projects, in the moment, boom, just comes. I'll write something or I'll talk something, and I think because there isn't the time to let it have its full course, but maybe that's the course that it's having right now, and that's what I need to accept. That's why it comes back.
Yeah.
And feels like a resentment, yeah.
Sometimes I think the mind will keep spinning and spinning and spinning, and it does feel like it hits this, and then it has the system crashes.
Yeah.
And life does that. Life does that.
Mm.
Fly in a glass jar, banging at the walls, not getting aware something's going to happen, and then it hits critical mass, and then systems crash. And when the systems crash, something new happens. And life does that. So your mind trying to find a solution is part of the fly on the glass wall until the system crashes, and then something else will come out of that. The life will do that.
Yeah. I can feel that coming, and it's like part of me is trying to stop it from happening, or having a desire. I don't want that to happen, but life has shown me it's been in these moments, and I know that very well, and I trust that quite a lot too. There's a real trusting as well here. So pleasant. So maybe part of me is trying to exit from the back door before it happens. But also, an emerging question, does it have to happen, or is that a story of self-sabotage that's playing? Does it have to?
That's in an old way of thinking, crashes, and as in the old pattern of thinking crashes. The program crashes, not the person, not the. You see what I'm saying? The program is running. The program will ultimately hit a peak and crash, and then new thinking can emerge out of that. New awarenesses, the pattern crashes. And something else is birthed out of that, but the person doesn't crash. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's a helpful recognition. Thank you. Yeah, and I feel it. I can feel that happening actually in small sparkles. So maybe just need to trust. Yeah.
But I can relate to so much of what you say, Maria, and thinking that life is pulling you in directions. But and I do agree with Vince's advice, but to a degree, because Vince, like, if she's like, say she's feeding the baby now, of course your mind's gonna be thinking, but like in a way, what you're saying to her is almost like can be also like checking out of what life is presenting you with now. So like it's kind of also not being present if like, okay, you're feeding the baby, but you're trying to do other things because what like right now you have this beautiful baby so soon. And it's so beautiful too. Like, it is. And because I struggle with it, it's like loving what life is presenting you. It's so hard. Find myself finding ways to check out all the time, but then realizing after, wow, really was those little moments though that were so precious and were teaching me so much as well. So there's like a fine line between the bypassing and what is the story. But I do relate to that, like pulling and wanting more time for me, because I have to deal with like when all my kids were young, or like now with my mom or my husband. It's like, and I just want to get back to, I feel like I'm abandoning myself, just like what you said. But then, as I said, like, you also don't want to check out because like just looking at you there with that baby is just the most beautiful thing.
No, yeah. And when that happens, so I have lots and lots of mindful moments and just really present moments. And the moments where checking out happens, checking out is seen instantaneously and accepted for what is. So, in many ways, that's it, isn't it?
Yes.
just keep doing, or undoing rather.
Yeah.
This.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's beautiful. Even checking out is what's happening, and it's seen. And so it's not a good or bad or a preference. It's what is and what works. Like checking out now, not checking out now. It's just seen. But yeah, the patterns I find, for me, those patterns, they'll build and build and build until they hit like that, until they die. And then I'll like, oh my God, I can't believe I believed that. It's like a whole epiphany comes after that. Like the
I mean,
seeker.
it's ridiculous. I mean, I say it's ridiculous, but needed actually, because these conversations just bring me back again and again to confirmations. Like, I know. What am I doing? I know this. I know.
It's like the seeker. The seeker is looking.
The super, yes.
It's critical mass and crashes, right? And then it's like, oh my God, how could I not see that? But
Yeah, mind is trying to understand, but truth always knows, doesn't it? Just we're here. Just it's happening. This.
yeah, but even the seeker was trying to understand.
Yeah, mind is trying to understand.
And seek and understand and figure it out, and the whys and the, and when it got tired and wore itself out, then
Yeah.
it saw that the whole seeker was a story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a very well camouflaged story too. Mm-hmm.
Being reminded of what we know can be good.
Can be good, yes, that's right. Yeah, That's what I'm realizing, that actually, so this is part of me returning to me and not abandoning myself, which, that's why it's manifesting as an urge to write or to on my own, because that's all I have. It's just a story.
Returning yourself back to you, just like you, not you in form, but you. Beautiful.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, wow.
I'm sure glad Jahaira asked Maria to talk.
Enough said now. I'm ready for bed slowly.
So is baby. So simple, right? Eat, back to sleep. Life is so for babies and dogs and cats.
Thank you. Thank you for listening and inputting.
Thank you.
I'll guarantee you that somebody who listens or watches the recording will get value out of what you've said.
Oh, and just me too. That last thing you said was just like, oh my goodness, how beautiful is that? It's always back to ourselves. Isn't that always what we're looking for?
Mm. I'm always surprised and even amazed at the direction that these meetups go in. They have a life of their own and they'll take off and head off in this direction or go in that direction. It's great.
So organic. That's what I realized recently. I had me about good acting or like improv. I think it was once Angelo talked about it, how in improv you could really get like, well, it's almost like it will and it should, and that's kind of what happens in these meetings too. And it's just so cool to see it play out because it's beyond our control and it's a perfect lesson, and it's cool. It's very cool.
And these processes, like me even going into the vibrational, looking at the patterns that way, that could just be another pattern, but it doesn't matter to me because I don't need to have it over. I know now that no matter form that fly in the glass jar takes, it doesn't matter anymore because the awareness is always watching it and there's nowhere to get. And sooner or later, who knows, that structure may fall as well. But it doesn't matter because there's nowhere I'm trying to get. I'm just watching what's happening.
Yeah, I don't know where it came from, but there's a line that says, nothing matters unless we make it so.
Yeah. I've learned to trust the fly in the glass jar. It comes in many forms. And if this is or isn't one, it doesn't matter to me anymore.
What came up, Jenny, when you said, I'm just watching it happening? What instantly emerged to ask is that a happening?
Yeah. Yeah, watching it happening. Is it happening? And it's interesting because I think the taste that I have of that is that this fly in the glass jar that is so subtle is that if there wasn't anything happening, there would be nothing. And this could be part of that unraveling the nothing. If nothing was happening, not even the watching what's happening, what would there be, which would be nothing, which would be total death, right? So, yeah. So, what's that?
not just total death, could be total life.
Yes. So the cool thing is I don't have to understand that, and I don't have to
In
figure it
fact,
out. Like that was a
you
beautiful
can't
insight, because that
understand.
is
It's way too complex to understand.
yeah, that's the taste I'm having, you know, when you can just taste it and you can smell it around the corner. And I don't have to chase it.
Mm.
There's not a need to chase it, since I can smell it coming around the corner. I don't need to chase it. I trust that
With the odor, the perfume.
it'll do it itself. I'll do this thing that I do until it's done, but it doesn't have the urgency of bashing against the glass walls trying to get through anymore. It's like, oh yeah, that is cool. Okay, let's just keep doing it until it dies. You know, that it plays out till it's done, right? And if I think I have any control over that, you know, then I'm going to make it happen faster or whatever. Thank you for that. Because you verbalized what I was sensing, right? But it wasn't around the corner yet. And I love that I don't have to chase it. It's just so awesome to not have to chase it, and to trust the process as it is. Just, this is life, how it's going down.
Great.
Okay, well, let's wind up, eh?
Mm-hmm. Mm.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
I'm really glad you spoke to Maria.
Oh, no, I can noticing ego wanting to come in, feel very special now.
I know, right? That happens to me a lot too. It's like, oh God, I know.
It wasn't, yeah, it really didn't feel, it felt like you needed to hear yourself back, clarifying that thing. Wasn't coming from me.
No, I understand. I understand, and thank you is just what we say. Bye, guys.
Take care. Thanks,
Bye,
guys. Bye. Bye.
bye, everyone.